Hey everyone, welcome back to Conversations in Pop Culture. I'm your host, Andrew Davis, and this episode is brought to you by my very own t shirt. Yes, I am a Gundam fan. I like to make fun of Taco Bell and the most interesting man in the world. So go buy my t shirt. I need the money. It is available in 16 colors and a mini skirt on Redbubble. So go support an indie comic slash content creator. And I'm not going to bore you with the rest of my sponsors because I have with me the Trigun Ultimate Overhaul team, and they were on, I think, a while back, a little less than a year ago. And obviously, we're going to be talking about that project, which was Trigun Reanimate and a variety of other stuff. So let's catch everybody up on what that project was that we spoke about the last time you guys were on.
Yeah, hello. My name is Dee. I am the project leader for Trigun Ultimate Overhaul. It's a project I started working on over 3 years ago, like 3.5 years ago now. And I have with me right now my one of my team members and project companions, Volpana.
Hey everyone, Andrew, thanks again for having us back. And I'm Volpana. Most people call me Vol for short. Um, and I also was one of the artists who worked on the Reanimate team, um, reanimating the Trigun anime opening. And I currently help D with some of the writing and translation for this new manga project we got going on.
So let's catch everybody up as I was stating, where you guys went on and did the redoing with a bunch of different styles of the opening of Trigun. And so how did that come about? I know we beat it down pretty hard the last time, but I know that you launched, I think, like a week after I interviewed with that, and that went very well. And so, how did all that come about before we dive into what's going on with the rest of what you're doing with Trigun?
Well, since HT is not here, HT is actually the project leader when it comes to Reanimate. But I can say a few things about like how everything was afterwards. Well, in general, we got a lot of like really positive reception. There was a lot of people who ended up seeing it who may and may not have been within the most active social medias that we are directly engaged with. But it's like a nice feeling to see a lot of people who you absolutely not at all connected with or not at all have anything to do with also talk about your project and the works that everybody's done and just like sharing the video and talking about Reanimate and being excited about Reanimate. But more importantly, and that's like where it absolutely blew our minds,
Oh my!
was that we actually got a response or a comment from the creator of Trigun, Yasuhiro Naito, commented on our video on Twitter and even retweeted it. And we also had the English voice actor for Wolfwood share it and comment on it, and the English voice actor for Meryl also reacting to the video itself. So that was like pretty amazing.
Yeah, and to even go into that, what was that like? Because obviously, I interviewed Jeff Nimoy, and Jeff Nimoy is very good at his job, for lack of a better word, and he is very good in Dragon, and I appreciate his voice. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but what was that like? Because when you do a project like this, sometimes voice actors can comment on it, and sometimes they can, sometimes they don't want to acknowledge it. And what was this like? Because obviously everybody on the team and everybody put in a lot of effort. And what was that like for you guys to have that support and people really appreciating it? Because people love Trigun, and Trigun has been around forever, and such having a positive reception, because it always is risky when people do things and redo an opening and do it in a slightly different style and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
And this was
Mm-hmm.
very, very well received by both, fans as well as people who actually worked on the project.
It was amazing, honestly. Um, I know our project lead HT. had kind of put together a bit of a plan for making for posting the video on Twitter and or different video hosting sites. And when they posted it on Twitter, they added Yasuhiro Naito and a lot of the Trigun voice actors, English voice actors as well, and kind of not really expecting much of a response. It's sort of like, well, hey, this is a fan project. Either like you said, either they'll acknowledge it or they won't. It's you know, it's up to them. We're putting it out there, letting them know we did this thing, and for them to actually respond in such a positive way was just mind blowing. And I think like as an artist too, as a fan artist, creating it's like, oh hey, I'm doing this little thing because I love it, and the people who created it or were involved in it professionally saw it and acknowledged it and liked it is just like, I mean, I kind of needed to sit down. you know?
Oh man, it's just the whole conversation. We were on like a chat at some point, and we're all just like telling ourselves like, "Fucking Naito has seen my work. He's seen my drawing."
Mm.
It's a weird like feeling, and you know what? We were so happy about the responses we got from the two voice actors and Naito himself that everyone who were willing and are a part of the team got a little copy, a printed, and oh, I lost the word for it, but we all got a little piece, a little picture of those responses in the mail, so we can like hang it up somewhere. So
Yeah.
I got that little crop, that little picture on my fridge.
Mhm. Yeah, it was really fun. So HT print printed out the tweets from Naito, from Jeff Nimoy, and from Dorothy Fan on little postcards and mailed them to a lot of the artists and the people who worked on the project. So I've got mine up in my like crafting cosplay space, and it's just every time I see it, it's like, oh man, that happened. It's
We
so
did it.
cool. But still, all of the acknowledgement from the the professional creators aside, um, just the level of excitement we got from other Trigun fans and other people, in like the Trigun fandom community was also just mind blowing. That people were just beside themselves. They were frothing at the mouth for this.
The
And what are
crazy
you
So
gonna
things
to,
we
do
to, to
did.
next?
even
Yeah.
so to even go into that, because obviously I haven't been to an anime con in a while. COVID happened, and then a variety of other stuff happened, and I just
Yeah.
moved away from DC to Connecticut, so I don't even know what anime cons around me. But at an anime con, you have AMV big celebrations. You have people, for lack of a better word, fangirling over certain things. And that's what this seems like, just on a very much an internet level. But it's also the idea that it's breaking down the barrier between an anime creator, a manga creator, and also what that work means. And this is what anime, at least I grew up, I'm 29. A lot of what it used to be back when I first got in was it was very much a community. And I don't know if it's me, maybe it's evolved, maybe things have become niche split, but this is sort of, I feel like, the old school sort of anime vibe that I grew up, where this is what anime was, and people come from all over different parts of life, and then everybody's sort of connected on both the professional level and on the fan level. And that's what your project, I think, really did in a lot of ways. And that's what's so cool about it, because it reminds people that, hey, look, the voices behind these characters are just like us. They're fans too. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's a very cool thing, I think, that happened. And I don't know how many people have actually fully thought about this and analyzed this to that degree, because I think you guys did something beyond special, where you united a fan base in a lot of ways.
I feel
Thank
like,
you.
yeah, of course, thank you. I feel like it also it reflects a lot about the people who decide to go into these kind of projects and who starts up these projects. It was, after all, a suggestion from one of the members of our Discord that, why not reanimate it? And HT just like grabbed onto that and was like, you know what, let's do it. Let's do this thing. Like, I want to be the person who kind of directs this to happen. And so HT went on to do all this work to make sure that this happened, and motivating people and uniting people to this. And a lot of the people who are kind of like in charge, or are the ones owning the different servers in a different group and the different projects, are also are all from that time as well. Like, there may be a different feeling about like what community is, and what kind of like social interaction should be, and what we feel like we want it to be. And I just, yeah, probably reflects in a lot of the desire to work on a lot of like animation. I definitely know there are other people out there who love animating stuff for Trigun. It's just not all of them we have gotten in contact with just yet.
Well, you
And I
need to
think,
try harder. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, we gotta try the best we can
well,
to
I think,
get as many people on board this. Sometimes there just is a language barrier that's really hard to get through. Though HC did say screw the language barrier. I'm gonna contact this Russian artist. I definitely know for the future of other reanimate projects in the future that we have more Russian artists now. We have talked to them, and they did not actually know this was gonna happen. So we will try next time to be more clear that this is gonna happen. So we can get more artists in on it.
yeah, and I think it's amazing too because like he was saying, there's a very active uh Trigun fandom among Russian anime fans. There's active Trigun fandom in Japan and in South Korea as well. Like the just kind of like the art and the fan works you see on Twitter or Tumblr or any kind of social media site where artists tend to hang out, fan artists tend to hang out. So it's really cool to see that there really are people from all over the world. Oh, and there's a huge, I guess a huge uh, uh, group of Trigun fans in South America as well, from a lot of different
Oh,
South American countries,
yeah, yeah.
Spanish-speaking Trigun fans too. So yeah, this story has so much appeal, and people, I mean, haven't had new content, excuse me, in over 10 years since the release of the movie Badlands Rumble. So when I think when people come together and organize a large scale project like this for a title that is it's older, it's now considered more of like a classic anime, cult classic anime, or manga. um the people who are fans of the thing are so excited that there's like, oh my god, new content. That the you know you have this opportunity to kind of breathe life into that and to show people in other fandom communities that we're still here, we still love this thing. This is still something that we are sharing with each other and with the world. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's just it really is just so wholesome. Like I don't know how to explain that where because I come from a different generation where I'm 29 and it was like I come from the generation of anime where you needed to watch certain shows. And if you weren't watching Trigun or you weren't watching Yu Yu Hakusho or you weren't watching, Dragon Ball Z, you really weren't an anime fan. And obviously things have splintered off a little bit, and it's better and it's worse at the exact same time in the anime world. But it is very much that old school throwback, and I think a lot of people in the anime world to some degree miss it, where because everybody during when Trigun first came out, you know, everybody was on the same anime plane, and it's kind of nice because it's sort of that throwback, and it's also nice because this project is massive and has such far reach. And it's also the fact that Trigun really is known by everybody, whether they know all the little details or only a little bit of it. Everybody knows the word Trigun. And so that's the other thing that's super interesting. And so I have to ask the entire question is that, and I don't know if you guys can answer it, but what is next with the animation side of things? Because we're going to get into some other stuff that's going on with you two and a bunch of other people. But what is next on the animation and the reanimation side of things? And obviously, I don't think you guys are going to stop anytime soon.
Oh,
It's just my gut
course not.
feeling. Just my gut feeling. You don't have to answer. You could take the fifth anytime.
Well, I got a big mouth. I always got things to say. Well, there is of course a limit to how much I am willing to say and how much I can say, also without HT being here or being the project
You
lead
could
and
take the
everything.
fifth. You could take the fifth, and we will move on to
Hey,
the other
hey,
stuff.
what I can say is no, we're not done. We are talking about possibilities of what is coming next. We are still talking with artists and the potential of new artists joining next time and what the potential rules of contributions are going to be next time. There's definitely been a lot of talking about that, but what exactly it's going to be and when we can say anything else is unknown at the moment.
And we're gonna table the anime side, but I do want to talk about what you guys are doing beyond the anime side. And this is a manga, I guess, retranslation or better translation. I am not exactly the best way how to phrase this. So correct me at any given point, but you two and a variety of other people have taken on another project of retranslating the manga, possibly also finding better scans of the manga, maybe, and giving a better manga experience collectively. So how did you
Mhm.
guys get into that? Because it is long overdue, and let's be realistic. Some of this manga stuff that came over is bad to be very nice, to be very nice about it.
Yes.
We've all seen subtitles out of context.
Mhm.
Yes.
So
Yes.
Yep. Yep.
Uh-huh. It's all right. To kind of explain to everybody who may not be in the know about it, Trigun Ultimate Overhaul is a project, an old project at this point. So I've been working on it for 3.5 years. So this project existed long before Reanimate even came to be. It even existed before the Trigun Discord that I own ever came to be. It started like a month after I got into Trigun, so it's been here a while. But the intention of the project is to not only ensure much higher quality scans than those that are most easily accessible at the moment, but it is most importantly to deliver a more accurate and more coherent translation that not only respects the original intention of the text, but also makes basically just a much more culturally appropriate and correct translation that also respects the English language, to say the least. Because that is something that definitely appears in a lot of translation is very weird English and downright inaccurate content. So, and in that vein, the Trigun manga is already hard to follow for a lot of people because of the paneling and the art itself. So adding a incoherent dialogue and text to it is not helping very much for people to uncover the true story that lies within the text itself, especially by how subtle and complex the characters can be if you do not understand their motivations because you don't understand what the fuck's going on when you read the text. That's what we want to clear up here. And we want to give the love that the Trigun manga deserves because personally, if you ask me, I much, much prefer the manga over the anime. The manga was also first. The anime was simply an adaptation of the early manga, and then we never got any other adaptation of the rest of the story. And we got an adaptation of like 2 volumes, and there's 14 others. So it's my personal preference for the Trigun story itself, and I want the manga to come back into the light and more people reading it.
Yeah, and even to go into this, because obviously, what is that like? Because I think you said it really well, where it's a hard manga to follow. It's not the greatest translation. It's not there's things that are missing from it.
Mm-hmm.
Context, not content, because it's plenty of content is there. Context is it, but what is that like? Because obviously, this is one of those things where it also though gives you a lot of room for interpretation as well. And so how are you figuring out how to balance that and making sure that you're hitting what is supposed to be what this is supposed to look like, for lack of a better word, I guess?
Well, first and most importantly is that I am already well familiar with the manga, having read the both existing translation of it and so on and so forth. So that kind of gives you like a good sense of what Trigun is about to begin with. But firstly I translated from the Japanese version. I am translating it directly from Japanese and then working on it from there, and that of course allows me to kind of capture the essence of what the text is about, what is being said, the cultural context to it. Because again, Japanese is an extremely contextual language that is very, very dependent on knowing what's going on and knowing who's on the page, who we're talking about, what we're talking about, and in what tone we're talking about. And that, for example, can be the very, very extensive list of Japanese pronouns that are specifically tied to both rank, gender, and mood, and that can change who exactly is being talked about, and so on and so forth. Um, but we also would end up encountering often when working from the Japanese text that we have sentence structure, we have metaphors, we have turns of phrases, we have sayings that simply does not exist in English, or just words that are just not used in English. And that is where the extra work of research comes in when you're translating, because I worked professionally translating, and that's where you start understanding the importance of the cultural meaning of things. That when you take, for example, there's a really, really good example for when we've encountered a problem that both exists in the official translation that comes out by Dark Horse Comics and the old fan translation that we refer to as the scanlation, have to translate a saying in which the line ends up being, and I quote, "Till death the outer roads taste like the outer roads," and that does not make a whole lot of sense. Um, I think we can all agree on that. It's become a bit of a meme in general for us because what is that supposed to mean? And ultimately, then when looking into that line and reading it, and then like researching and talking with people who may be more culturally aware of Japanese sayings, it turns out that this is like a Japanese saying for, when you're gonna die or you're gonna stick to a path before you die, things like that. So, okay, that tells me that I gotta find an English turn of phrase that kind of conveys the same information, and that's when the line in the overhaul version becomes something along the lines of you could choose to walk down this path till you bite the dust, which again makes more sense. And again, we could use a bit of like the thing with the roads to like the walk down the path, and then instead of the Japanese version of talking about like dying as the outer roads, in English that might be more like bite the dust or kick the bucket or something like that, something that does not exist within Japanese. But yeah, it requires a lot of like attention and a lot of research to ensure that you are translating it correctly and the different meanings. And so yeah, translating is more than just a technical part of translating. It's also research, and I'm doing a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, it is fascinating, and obviously, I am not a translator. I know a lot about, old school Japanese anime, and I'm a big Tezuka fan, and I understand a little bit of their culture. But obviously,
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine it is beyond tricky because if you mess up, I guess, a gender position, you could throw an entire book off in a lot of ways. And I know that a book is right now being translated on Kickstarter that is a Tezuka book, and it's also like a new interpretation. And it
Mm-hmm.
is very tricky because you want to not be disrespectful to the old stuff, but you also want to give it more of, does this make sense? And also, I think,
Mm-hmm.
and correct me if I'm wrong, back in the day when Trigun hit, and I don't know exactly when Trigun came over to America. I don't know if you know that, like the manga per se.
2001.
Yeah, and hopefully we agree, but I think in 2001, that was when everything was being Americanized in a lot of ways, and so you had all this anime and manga coming over, and they
Jelly
kind of,
donuts are my favorite.
yeah, yes,
And
yes,
spaghetti.
it
Yes.
was the Wild West, and they legitly just like wiped out the entire, Japanese culture. I
Mm-hmm.
think it took almost like 16 years for it to go the other way back in a lot of ways and to leave stuff in. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Sailor Moon's a great example of that. Um, and so what is that like too? Because I think that's also a part of translating where
Mm-hmm.
de-Americanizing it. I don't know if that's a word. It might be sound clipped
Yeah.
out. I might get in trouble for it, but hey, that's what we're going with
That,
here.
I
you
mean,
know what?
like, uh,
No,
uh,
it's funny you should say de-Americanized because we're actually doing the entirely opposite.
yeah.
We have experienced the opposite in the manga, where they continue using Japanese terms when the world is and has been canonally confirmed by the creator to speak English. That's also why all the signs that are drawn in the manga are written in English, because they speak English, and yet they keep using Japanese words and keep calling people san and whatever, or senpai, and it's like, but they speak English. Come on. So we're actually doing the opposite. I hear actually in manga world, it's the opposite problem, that they don't want to take the Japanese out and they want to use as much Japanese as possible, even though they're writing an English translation. So we are actually removing the Japanese parts of the text that are not supposed to be there. There are things that are supposed to be in Japanese that will stay in Japanese because that is the intention of the text, like names. Names should not be translated. For example, there are certain kanji. Kanji are like big Japanese letters, symbols that can mean an entire word, that are specific to names. I like to just call them name kanji. I have at the time forgotten what their Japanese name actually is, But that shows that you're not supposed to translate it. That means that this name will remain in Japanese, just like you don't translate an English surname like Miller into the literal word for Miller because it's a name. So when we see that come by in the manga, obviously it stays in Japanese because that is the respectful thing to do, which you will also see in the official. Funnily enough, in the official version given out again by Dark Horse Comics, they translate name kanji, which is very disrespectful.
I also want to add too that when I came into the project, Dee had already made the decision to try and translate not just into English, but more of an American English for an American audience because Trigun has always been super popular with American anime fans because of the sci-fi Western aspect of it. It's like, oh yeah, cowboys and six guns and that sort of thing. Very prevalent in kind of the American mythos and pop culture. So my first role was as an American localizer, being able to say, well, yeah, in more like standard European English, you would say it this way. In American English, you would say it that way. Also, two, one of the things with translating is capturing the dialects, the different speech patterns of different characters. So we see this most strongly with Wolfwood, that in the Japanese, he speaks with a Kansai accent, which is sort of like a quote-unquote country accent, and the kind of the most recognizable analogous accent in American culture would be a U.S. Southern accent. So trying to give his speech patterns more of that flavor as we're writing, as we're translating, and it serves the purpose of definitely informing his character, but also it makes his dialogue more recognizable as well, because Naito does not put little speech bubble tails on his speech bubbles.
Not
So
all
it's,
the time.
yep. So it can be really, really hard to tell who is speaking. So giving Wolfwood in particular, but also some of the other characters, a flair with the dialect, we really feel is going to help readers understand and follow the text a lot more easily.
Yeah, because like when you're reading a manga, you of course have the panels and everything, but the one thing that does make a character, like often a character's presence is being known before they show up. Sometimes they speak out of the panel. And the only way to ensure that each character retains a strong presence of who they are, almost like a stage play, screenplay, like they have to have a character through their dialogue and their dialogue alone, like in a book. So there's also a lot of attention from us to ensure that each character is unique in their speech pattern and the way that they present themselves, whether through word choice or accent choice. And this is all while maintaining the point and what is being said. So you can still say the same thing while using different words, but it's still the same meaning. And that's like what we hold very, very tightly on to, is that whenever we work on anything or whenever we take any creative liberties, and I mean like creative liberties with like quotation mark, because we are really strict about ensuring that everything makes sense as intended, it is to create that uniqueness, like Wolfwood's southern accent, Meryl's extremely polite and big word choice, speech pattern, Millie's very, very positive attitude, Knives' very direct, aggressive attitude, Legato's flair for drama. Like all that kind of comes forward in how the text is being written. And speaking of like southern dialect, we are currently free writers, and one of the writers is not here in the talk right now, but that is Arth, also one of our friends and our token southerner, to ensure proper and realistic southern dialect is being applied. But also the last piece of the puzzle that kind of makes this the dream team of writing.
Yeah, Arth is Arth is so amazing. Arth oftentimes will catch little things that we miss when we're proofreading, when we're you know, looking at you know, different pages. They're the one who says like, hey, you got a typo here, or this is, you know, this is misspelled, or even
This feels
um
weird to me.
yeah, Arth has an amazing instinct for like, hey, this is off and I don't really know why. And usually there's some way that we could word it better.
Mhm.
For a long time it was just D and I working on the translations, and Arth joined a few months ago, and it's like our work has just taken off to the next level. They just bring so much to this project, to the text, to the dialogue, and to the whole process as well.
There's like a really, really like great technical understanding of like how text sounds and how things come off, and just in general, like just a keen eye for like the little details there. And that's like where Wall also when Wall joined a long time ago, like I don't remember, like a whole over a year ago,
2 years almost.
2 years,
Yeah.
joined the project as well. I had like another writing team at that time, but I feel like Vol's taste and flair for how text sounds, just the extra pair of eyes, just the passion for the feeling and the understanding and the coherency of text has also really, really helped immensely to again make the overhaul text so much better. Because like there can always everything can always improve, and that's where I just realized just how much more, like how much better we could make it than with Vol's also taste for the theoretical and the just the artsy part of it. I kind of see sometimes Arth as the technical expertise and Vol as the artsy, very, very like keen on the feeling and the
I,
characterization through text.
I think that's a very fair assessment, D.
See, this is so interesting because obviously I deal with a lot of people on Kickstarter and they're creating a comic from scratch or they're creating a manga from scratch. And you guys obviously, you're not redrawing Trigun, but you're translating it and making it smoother. And that in of itself is a unbelievable skill. I mean, there are people who get paid at places like Tokyo Pop and a variety of other places and Shonen Jump that really do this full time. And obviously, they have massive teams. Obviously, they're in coordinations when all that stuff gets over. But I think that a lot of people don't understand how complicated it is. and even getting it right and making sure that the word sounds like it's supposed to with how Trigun is, which is a Western Southern vibe with the sci-fi. And
Mm.
it's very important because one of the things about comics versus any other medium is I control a lot of how somebody sounds, how somebody speaks, how fast they speak, what they're using. And
Mm.
so if you just use straight up words, and right now if we were in a comic and we were just talking, and we didn't give any context of any language or anything like that, anybody can interpret me to sound Southern, Northern, Western,
Mm.
European. But when you introduce that dialect and those components, it does direct the audience and the reader to do certain things, and also even word choice in a lot of ways as well. Where if somebody is using bigger words, chances are they're speaking slower. If they're using smaller words, they're speaking faster. So
Mhm.
what is this like? Because like it's a massive skill, and I don't know what you guys do for your full time jobs, and you don't have to disclose that, but this is an unbelievable skill to have to say, hey, I have localized and retranslated an anime slash manga, and I think it's super super important to acknowledge that because I know
Mhm.
people in the Kickstarter world who would kill for this.
Oh, I thank you.
I take the compliment.
Man,
I
thank
am
you. I know
well.
for me,
Mm.
a big part of it, I have I've actually trained in a lot of different artistic disciplines. One of which is theater. Um, uh, so I've had to study different dialects and accents and ways of speaking in a lot of different ways. Um, so I find myself falling back on that again and again, like having those experiences of, how do sound like you're from somewhere else, or you're from a different, socioeconomic status, or whatever it is, for a stage production. Um, and I think for me, it's always a tricky balance of, okay, well, how would a person, how would this character actually say this in real life, and then when you're writing it out, having to make sure that you're not bogging down the words with the dialect,
Oh
because
yeah.
you can overdo it so easily. And we've had to kind of develop our own set of rules of, like, okay, with words that end in ing, we're gonna drop the g, and it's just gonna end like n apostrophe. There's some, like gonna, wanna,
A lot
something
of.
like shoulda is usually should have, should've. We don't want it to be too much. We don't want, people who are maybe reading this in English as a second language to get too confused by the dialect, that the meaning
Mm.
gets obscured. So um, it really is a lot to kind of, uh, to hold in balance all at once. It's like, yes, we really
Mm.
want to give the text this flavor, the dialogue this flavor, but how do we do that? How do we put a dash of that in there without, say, dumping the whole spice bottle in, and ruining
Oh
the
yeah.
stew?
Yeah, there's a rhyme and reason to picking what exactly is being used when writing accent. For example, again, like remove some of the G's, we use the wanna, gonna, lotta, so on. But for example, we do not remove the H in like here, ear, like what's going on here. like things like that, because that would make it too complicated here or there. So we keep some some dialect or like some accent indicators to the minimum, and some get a little harder. Again, we the most important thing is to still keep this coherency and understanding for people who may, again, as Bold say, not speak English as their first language. That's also where it comes in, for example, for me, because I don't actually speak English as my first language, but I have a lot of experience with English and have also worked for a long time with English and the English language, both spoken and written. So I have this very, very strong attention towards sentence structure and what it sounds like and how it's presented, because I have to technically, or used to have to, balance between my own mother tongue's different sentence structure towards English being completely two different things. My background when it comes to what I can bring to the table, sort of like technical expertise, is that I have some language education background in English, German, and my mother tongue Danish, as well as Latin and other grammatical, like specific classes on grammar and working in languages you don't actually know to begin with. So, like the basic understanding of the groundworks of language and the roots of all language and grammar and its structures. And then I got some extended humanitarian fields within like psychology and ergo therapists, yada yada yada. So a lot of like focus on the psychology of people and the way they talk, again, analysis of behavior and speech patterns and development and yada yada yada. But currently I work professionally translating as well, so I can bring some of that like cultural and research background that comes with language and ensuring proper translation to the table as well. And this is actually a job I did land because of my project existing.
Yeah, that's right.
So Overhaul got me a job. Um, so yeah, it's there is just a lot of like decisions that some of them I don't even think we're fully aware of anymore. That this simply just is the way we're doing it, but it comes through working together really really well as a team. We communicate very very well. We're just super got like a super great balance between being able to tell each other, hey, I don't think this is a great idea, let's change this, let's do this sounds weird to me, discussing what we experience, what we think, and without like any kind of like sense that of personal problems. Like there is nobody getting offended about anything, which is very very like against what I think all of us believe, but also very, very counterproductive. Like there is just a sense that we're here to make the best translation ever, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff going on, and obviously, I don't know how far you are in translating the manga and how much work goes into every single chapter, and what does that even process look like, and all that stuff, because obviously, from what we spoke about, there's research, there's understanding, there's probably conversations on certain things, and even how does that all work, and how far are you into this entire process? Chapter wise, at the very least.
Well, we're actually really really far as the first stage of the project is concerned, and the reason why I say first stage is because we've had a huge development here lately about upcoming uh, content that will come out in the future. As a lot of people who are following Overhaul says, is that Overhaul never ends. It's forever. It we will never stop. But at the moment in the release schedule, have already reached volume 12, so we're actually almost there. That we're finished the release schedule, and this is what we just call Overhaul 1.0 now, because what we have newly come to realize is that working on finding new places to upload uh, Overhaul and all our work, we come to learn that as Overhaul stands now, we are actually not allowed to upload it a lot of places, due to the fact we were actually using English scans. And these scans, of course, back in the day, I cleaned up like all of it. Like I removed all text and reconstructed all background that was obscured by text. A lot of like photo editing and balancing black and whites and then all that stuff, like just removing all the grime and dirt and all the stuff on it, so just make clean, crisp pages. A process that took 4 months, I think. But we now come to realize that with these pages, we can't actually upload these to usual manga distributing sites because of like we don't know why, but possibly legal reasons. Not sure. That kind of brought us to deciding to do something because it was the bad news as the perfect time because we had already been looking into covering never before covered Trigun manga content. There is a little extra manga that was connected and released in the same time span as the movie Badlands Rumble called Multiple Bullets. And this manga has never been fully covered ever and never been fully uploaded anywhere else online. And we decided to be the first. So we worked on scanning that ourselves and looking into making it an overhaul translation of that, which led us to finding like the best pages we could because our own scans are absolutely amazing. They are huge, they are crisp, and they are just looking fine. Really fine. Like I've never been this excited about pages before, but I'm like super excited.
Like
And
blasted in the face with 4K
4K.
Trigun pages.
And it just like snapped right then and there. We're like, you know what? Let's do it all again. Like let's just clean the whole manga once again, like all 16 volumes. There is like the two Trigun volume 1 and 2 and Trimax 1 to 14. Let's just do the whole thing again and add our newer and improved overhaul text to all of them. So that's the future also like for overhaul is that we're gonna do the whole thing again and it's gonna be even bigger and better.
And I think too, we now have the advantage of we have the whole team. Because like Dee said, they cleaned and balanced all of the pages themselves before either Arthur or I joined the project. But now we have Arth as like our MVP of procurement. So they're the one who's producing these gorgeous, beautiful, high resolution scans. And D is balancing them. And I'm taking on some of the work of removing text and doing the photo editing and doing the final steps to prepare the pages for the English text typesetting. So like that's really exciting that all of us are involved in like the more technical quote unquote behind the scenes aspects of it of this process now.
Yeah, because like the reason why it also becomes like an overhaul 2.0 is because that despite how much effort was put into the translation in the first place, there's always space for improvement. And over the years now that I've worked on the translation, I have not only gained a lot of experience, but a lot more like tools and processes to ensuring the translation is better. So I really have been looking at some of my first translation and be like, you know what, there I can do this better. Like we can do this better. So I am actually translating the whole manga all over again, and then reworking the translations I've already done, the ones that need rework, that is, and just to have the same level of quality that we are experiencing right now for all this experience that we've gathered and the tools and we've gathered, but also to improve the typesetting because that's also something you get better at. The typesetting is the process of adding the text and all the technicalities that comes with good uh like fonts and spacing and yada yada, to add that to the text to ensure that everything like looks nice. Definitely gotten better at that too, and also the more in your face like big letters that comes with like screaming and shouting and things like that, like gotten a lot better at making that too. So that's something I want to improve on. So once Overhaul is finished its first original run, because we're still going to finish the first version, we're definitely getting to work on the next version, but also getting to work on covering this never before been seen Trigun content that also includes pages in the Japanese omnibus that has also never ever been translated before. So we are going to be the first to share this with everybody, and that is exciting.
Yeah, and to even talk about this, because obviously, one of the issues with manga and anime is that while a lot of stuff does come over, most of it doesn't. And even, I mean, do you remember Love from Across is a great example of that, where that thing still hasn't come over on a legal level. And so this is something that I think is going to be very appreciated by fans because fans want to support projects. And but it's also the idea that things get hunkered up, things get delayed, things get lost. Also, things get put to the side because companies say, look, we don't have time for this at the moment or anything like that. And so this is giving people who said, hey, look, I know this thing exists, but this company is not getting to it anytime soon. Nothing against Dark Horse, but Dark Horse has their hands filled up with enough things that I think Trigun is not on their front burner, for lack of a
Oh
better word.
no.
Oh
So,
yeah. No, definitely not. And I think too, um, one of the reasons why we are doing this project is because all of the physical Dark Horse printings of Trigun and Trigun Maximum are out of print. So they're getting harder and harder to get your hands on. Um, that I mean, you look at the resale value of some of the English language Trigon omnibuses is through the roof. um,
What you want?
so
$300? four
yeah,
hundred dollars?
this is
yeah,
something that's in my wheelhouse. So, I mean,
yeah,
obviously, it's a joke. Andrew, the investor here.
yeah.
It's a joke. I'm on a bunch of streams, and the joke is I'm on a bunch of streams in the next week or two talking about money and comics and a variety of other stuff. And I tend to deal with floppies. I don't deal with graphic novels. But
Mhm,
what's happening now is that certain books, both in comics and manga, are worth bank. I mean, Dress Up
Mm-hmm.
Darling is a good example of that, where I think that first issue or first volume of the manga is like a $90 book on eBay.
wow.
It will come down, everybody, because there'll be more printed. It will come down. It will eventually end, and you'll be able to get what you want. It's just with the printing shortage and it just being sold out, and it's a runaway. But the point is that I have books in my personal collection and my manga collection that people are like, "Oh man, I'll give you $50 for it when I bought it for 10 because it's out of print." And you could read it digitally and you could read it legally or illegally depending on how you want to read it. And you can get anything digitally. It's just a matter of can you get something physically, but even still, there's a bunch of stuff that you can't even get digitally anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
think that's a big problem because I don't deal with that type of investing, but I have friends who do, where all they do is they sell trade paperbacks. So they bought a trade paperback for 20 and then they sell it for 60. And because the book's out of print and people want it. So that's
Mm-hmm.
a big issue of accessibility of just any version of it, and I think you bring up a great point on that
I
where
definitely also personally experienced a very, very direct consequence, or, well, for me, it's almost like a good thing, but it is ultimately a consequence in general of this. Back in the day when I started collecting the Trigun manga physically, it was like right on the like the brink of the time where like the price just started skyrocketing, so things were still affordable, except for the few like few volumes, especially the Trigun Maximum Omnibus 3, which was referred to at the time as the Holy Grail, because that was the most expensive one and the hardest one to get your hands on. But everything else was not specifically or directly super expensive. But one of these volumes, which is specifically Trimax Volume 13, I bought for like $15 at the time. I had a thing before that I did not want to like. I literally had a buying rule to myself to not buy a volume for over $10 because that's what things were costing back then. You could get them for under $10. These singular volumes. Then I had to buy 13 for $15 because like okay whatever. But then now, as time has progressed, that same volume that I bought for $15 is now over $300 worth. Just within the last 3 years, that price has gone from that, like from 15 to over 300, and it's insane that it's these prices.
Welcome
They're
to my world. Welcome to my world.
thanks.
I'm very honest about this. Where I
Mhm.
buy and sell comics on eBay, and I'm going to be
Mhm.
doing $20,000 to $30,000 this year on eBay alone. And I mean, I'm dealing with comics, and I don't say that to brag, but I say it because these items are now becoming collectible, and
Mhm.
people want this stuff. And the people who want this now have good jobs that pay them six figures, and they say, screw it. I want my books from my childhood. I want the comics from my childhood. I want the Pokemon cards from my childhood.
Mhm.
And they
Mhm.
don't care because $300 to them doesn't impact their financials. They just say, I want it and I want it in good condition. And that's what's crazy about it. And I mean, I'm not selling my manga collection. I don't know if the two of you are selling your manga collection,
Not
Oh
but
hell
anytime
no.
soon.
Nope.
I'm
I mean,
not
they
selling.
do say sell high, but I don't know. I'm
I
like,
mean, I mean, I'll put
I'm
it this
attached.
way. I'll put it this way. If I have like my Dragon Ball Z collection, somebody was to offer me a really ridiculous number, like 10K, I would take the 10K and run.
Okay, yeah, in that
But
way, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
even still, like I have personal books, like that like Zombie Powder is a good example where I'm like, I don't want to sell that so quickly because I enjoy that, and so, but it's so crucial because it goes back to the idea is that I just want to read a lot of this stuff too. And I don't necessarily also want to own any of this necessarily, but I want to read it. And I think that's a big thing where a
Mhm,
lot of people are also in that camp saying, look, I got enough shit in my house. And I like Trigun, but I don't need to own Trigun, but I want to read it.
mhm.
And I think you're
Exactly.
hitting that niche too, where it's the ability of even just finding it, people being priced out of the market, and also it's kind of like saying, hey, look, I hear Trigun is this legendary anime. What the fuck is it about? And
Yeah.
because I mean I don't have kids yet, but when I have kids, I'm gonna try to introduce them to things like Dragon Ball, Naruto, Trigun, Full Metal Alchemist, Brotherhood, and
Mhm,
obviously I'm talking maybe when they're old enough. So I'm 29. If I have a kid in the next 3 years, when I'm 42, you know they'll be 7, right?
uh-huh.
So that's an appropriate time to start introducing them to certain things.
And that's like when the price is just gonna like explode again when
Mhm.
that, as you say, those that experience this as a child come to an age where they have kids and they want to re-experience that nostalgia with their child. And it's like things just
Avatar: The
fly.
Last Airbender is a great example of that. In the
Mm-hmm.
middle of COVID, in May of 2020, it was like the top show in the world, and it
Yep.
was
Well, that's
crazy.
because it came on Netflix.
It came on Netflix, and everybody was home, and all of the people in my generation now have kids, and they're like, "This show's awesome. This
We're gonna
show's
watch
bitching."
this. Yeah.
And, and that's what I think is going to happen to things
I
like
also just
Trigun.
watched it recently too, so that's pretty funny.
I was lucky. I got to interview Jesse Flowers, who plays Toph, for the second
Oh,
Oh,
time when
oh,
that came out like a
nice.
week later. Great interview,
oh,
fun interview. Um, Second interview, and I'm just stupid because I ask people. Um, This is the only reason why I got Jeff Nimoy is I just asked him.
Yeah,
It,
yeah, man,
it,
just that.
it sounds crazy. Like you asked me for an interview. And I'm like, sure, why not? Well, it'll be fine. But like again, that's the whole thing, and that's what I think is going to happen with Trigun. And I think that you're fulfilling a niche because again, I don't have
Hmm.
$300 to spend on a manga book right now. You
Hmm.
know, just because
And
I'm doing well in my eBay business does not mean that's pure profit.
no, and that's the funny thing about Overhaul is that the project was started as it's a passion project. I was appalled and angry at the translations that were accessible. Like I was angry at a. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I look at this and I'm immediately like, "Who the fuck would look at this and be like, this is okay?" Like I am like, I felt like this was just not acceptable, so I wanted to make a new translation. However, so it started just from a personal vendetta against the existing translations, being angry over that this was considered okay, and now it's I feel like it's so great that the project actually came to be because now it almost feels like necessity for some people. And man, let me tell you, like the existing translations that people have access to online, there are people who have scanned the official translation. And I could also go into, and we probably will briefly go into right now, into like what's wrong with the official translation. But even more so, the most accessible existing fan translation out there of Trigun right now and the one that most people have read and will read, which is Breaks My Heart. I have a stroke every single time I see it. And we will talk about why. And this is like another reason why Overhaul is. And this is not just like again speaking because it's my baby, it's my project. We were like talking about here that stuff that is just inexcusable on a lot of levels, and so the Scanlation is the old fan translation that came out around the same time as the official mangas were actually released back in the beginning of the 2000s and around that time. Some of these might even come from later. I'm not sure. There were a lot of translations back in the day. There was a whole mess around that about people adding things to the manga to the translation that enforce, for example, a ship they may have to change the text just to be right. Things like that existed a lot. There was a lot of confusion. But as it stands now, the old fan translation accessible has several blaring issues that I feel like not a lot of people um, talk about, and some people just take for gospel and don't even really question source. Like always question source. Do it. But what you might experience in the scanlation is a lot of fan translation sins that you will see in others, which is overblown, overly colorful language, swearing to a juvenile level that never really existed within the text itself. We are seeing really, really bad quality scans, super, super tiny. Is this for ants sized pages? Just horrid, horrid presentation. We're also seeing just absolutely insanely bad typesetting, just really, really big technical mistakes in the typesetting, typos, coding remaining within the text, and those are just technical stuff. But that's when we kind of reach into the lot more like personal maybe the wrong word, the much more like people oriented problems, because the scanlation includes unnecessary and non-existent offensive language that has, or themes that have simply just been added by the writers and never ever exist within the text. Like there is no trace of it in the Japanese text. These things have simply been added for the sake of being edgy, I guess. And we're talking, they add a character who is now suddenly a pedophile talking about doing things you're not supposed to do with kids, and does not exist in the text, only in this translation, because I guess they felt like adding that. And we have several scenes in which there is a character in Trigun Maximum that is a trans woman. So to explain that quickly to people, that is a he that has become a she, or is
Think
a
think
she.
Poison Street Fighter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and she is referred to as a she. She has a female name. She is a she. Yet the Scanlation writers had decided to call her an it. Like, why? just why? Like,
Yeah,
there's
it's
not even like a technical reason for why they have made this decision, because the pronoun used towards her can actually mean he, she, but it can technically also mean it. But if you're a person looking at this page and seeing they're referring to a person, you obviously don't use it, because that is when referring to a thing using this pronoun. So technically, it is incorrect, but it gives off the notion, we don't know for sure, but it gives us a very, very strong hint that this is an intentional decision that they have made, because I guess they don't have a problem with the individual being a trans woman. I do not know. Point is, using it is extremely offensive, even if it even if the person was not a trans individual, it is still offensive to call a person an it. So I feel like that
yeah.
was an intentional choice.
Yeah, and then I do want to make a note as well that we as a team we've had a lot of conversations about this because this trans woman character who exists in the manga is not in the anime, has a pretty significant role to play in the manga. And she's a fantastic character. She's so cool. Um, so we also had a lot of conversations about using language, contemporary language that is respectful towards her, um, and uh, updating that as well in the official. Um, they use a term that to describe her that was acceptable to use by the trans community in the past is no longer considered acceptable or best most respectful term to use now. So like, okay, well we're gonna we're gonna have another character describe her as a trans woman because um, that's how trans women today often describe themselves. So moving forward with that sensitivity, and perhaps another team will come along in another 20 years and the language will have changed and they'll look at this, what we're doing now, and say, okay, well, we need to update this again. That's
To
fine.
even talk about that, and sorry for interrupting, because this is where things
Mm-hmm.
get really tricky, I think,
Mm-hmm.
as translations, is that obviously we go back to the 90s, certain language was acceptable. The R
Mm-hmm.
word is a good use of this. I don't think I need to say, I think we're all familiar with the R
Yep.
word, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm trying to avoid it to be sensitive. My job, I work in digital accessibility, so obviously, um,
Mm.
I'm
You're
familiar.
all
So
good, man.
I don't want to get fired. But, joke
Burn at
aside
the
here.
stake.
Joke aside here. I prefer to have electricity and food on my table, guys.
Yo.
Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Another joke. Another joke. No. But in the '90s, that word was a lot more acceptable, and there
Mm-hmm.
has been a bunch of words that have come in and out of being acceptable and not being acceptable. And this is where things get, I think, tricky. Also, is that you want to remain as true and as accurate as possible, but there also
Absolutely.
has to be compromise to some
Mm-hmm.
degree, and also, it also is different where I don't know where what year Trigun takes place in. Obviously, if you're telling a story that took place in 1991, it's a little bit harder. And I'll give an example. If you're telling a movie about, I just saw Atlanta bombing movie at the Olympics. You can't use certain language. You have to use 1996 language. But with,
Hmm.
I think, Trigun, you can be more. Trigun is not set in one time period per se, so I think you have more leeway. And so,
Hmm.
what was this like? Because obviously, you don't want to offend anybody, but you
Nope.
also have to use certain dialect to some degree, and certain language can't be avoided. Like if Trigun's a character who would say "fuck," you know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
Like,
don't worry. Fuck.
but
No, it's more Wolffoot's thing.
but I think the point is the same. Is that what are those
Hmm.
conversations like? Because those aren't easy per se.
No, that's where research comes in, and again, that's another thing that I've done a lot of research for. One of the scenes in question when it comes to how they refer to this trans woman character, I don't mind like using the word here. I don't use it like a daily, but I'm gonna explain like what your word was used in the early 2000s translation here. But the term used towards her was transvestite, which at the time was considered acceptable way for the trans community itself as well uh, to communicate what exactly they are. However, I did the research for the Japanese word, which I can't remember at the top of my head right now, but I researched a Japanese word used in that sentence that was translated into transvestite. And
Is it like OKAMA?
yeah, yeah, Okama, yeah,
Because One Piece uses it with Bon Clay.
yeah, exactly. It's that word. It's that word. And I did the research on that one. And in the at the time that it was used in the Trigun manga when it came out, it was reclaimed and considered the polite and acceptable and correct way to refer to a trans individual when in context positively. Of course, the word can also be used as negatively charged, but when not in a negatively charged context, it is entirely acceptable within Japanese language to use this word to describe a trans individual. That tells me that Naito had made a conscious decision to choose that word, which was acceptable, which means that we should also, at the time in which we're making the translation, use the acceptable term to refer to a trans individual. And that's why the decision was made to use trans woman instead of transvestite.
And also, to the context in which that word appears is a positive one.
Yes, they're
When
saying she's a
Mer-
powerful person.
yeah, I believe it's Meryl who sees this character. Elendira is her name, so Meryl sees Elendira after Elendira is introduced, and just basically says, "Wow, the way the official translates it is to something like, wow, she's a transvestite, which we've turned to trans woman, and then
She
it
has a
says
greater
something,
figure than me.
yeah, like, wow, she's really pretty, like, so she's impressed by Elendira, and Elendira is a character who's very well put together, who's
She's not
very stylish, very fashionable. So Meryl, as a also a very fashionable person herself, is like,
gets a
oh
little jealous.
wow, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, and another time when speaking about Elendira, they kind of say that she's like really really powerful, so they're talking about her in more positive charged context here. So in this case, that's where the research came in that told me that this is the polite and correct way to refer to it. They did not use a slur, they did not use a negatively charged or derogatory term for it. Therefore, it's completely acceptable then to change it into something more modern, as long as it remains what the intention was with the first word being the culturally accepted word of the time. Um, However, again, something that the scanlation seems to completely ignore. There are other times as well, when you mentioned the R word, that the scanlation just uses the R word for again no reason, doesn't ever exist in the text again just to be edgy. Another time they also use the F word, and I'm not talking about fuck, but I'm talking about the derogatory term used towards a homosexual man. Again, without any reason, it's just there, just because they
Because
can. Like,
this is where it gets interesting is that obviously everybody's got into squabbles, And there's a difference between the heart of an argument and white noise. And it
Mm-hmm.
seems like with a lot of, these scans, people have injected white noise into it versus the
Mm-hmm.
heart of it. And look, as people might say, hey, look, I'm trying to create a different experience with my translation, and that this is how I'm interpreting it. And I'm trying to create this to be a bit more gritty, for lack of a better word, whether right or wrong. I don't know what those people were thinking, but maybe they were trying to make it more R-rated, for
I
for for
think
lack of a
so.
better word.
Yeah,
And
and oh, sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
oh, no, no, please, please.
Well, I was just going to add to, looking at sort of the context of, well, 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 I guess context is the wrong word, but uh, the the old fan scanlation, was scanned from the magazine releases. So we're looking at early mid 2000s, and there was definitely this culture of you know cringe comedy, of shock comedy at the time of everything needs to be like you said, gritty and edgy.
I mean,
So
I'll,
I
I'll
think
throw I'll throw a movie down there. Natural Born Killers came out around that time. That was a very
mm,
culturally shocking movie, and I and
yeah.
I thoroughly enjoy it. And it had a lot of shock culture, and also, I mean, we all know the term clickbait, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where somebody says, "Make $1 million with my simple solution," and it's on a YouTube video, and
Stockholders hate me.
Yeah.
and so I think that also might be it too, where a lot of people were trying to early monetize
To
things,
sensualize.
or
Yeah.
get something, and everybody talks. Oh my God, he said the F word. Oh my, and
But
you
mm,
know, and so, but that could be it too. But what were you saying?
Oh well, I also just wanted to add to that edginess doesn't hold up. It had, like, to me, and looking at the that interpretation, it hasn't aged well, and I think especially comparing, like Dee said, comparing it to the original Japanese text, comparing it to Naito's intention, like, this is not Naito's Trigun. you
no.
know,
Mm-mm.
it's something. It's too far off the mark. It's trying to make Naito's vision something that it isn't. And it's also distracting from Naito's story in
Mm-hmm.
a lot of ways, because Naito does some very, very intentional storytelling. He has some very intentional themes that are present in Trigun. He's got a lot of really very complex, socially pertinent messages in his work, and I think that by changing the text, changing the dialogue so drastically, um, and from what it appears to be a shock factor, that clickbait factor, sensationalizing it, really, it does a disservice to this story that Naito is trying to tell with his work. Um,
Exactly. And it's like, I am a person who I do not mind sometimes the edginess. As you can see from my icon, I certainly don't mind edgy. But I for me the main problem is, and we may have like different opinions within the writing team about these kind of things, which again, the important part of the teamwork is that we simply are just agreeing on the one crucial fact. And that is, if it's not in the text, do not add it. Do not change the text. If the text was edgy, I'll add all the edgy there is. Like this, for me, I am not a big person on policing speech, but I am a big person on respect for the text. Do not add something that's not there. If he used a derogatory term towards homosexual men in the text, then it should be there. and then that's how it should be. But if it's not there, then don't add it. There is one time where they do use a term, a little bit of negatively charged term towards a man they consider feminine, and I think like it kind of boils down to some bandits basically calling Vash a pansy. And that stays there because that was in the text. They used a derogatory term towards a feminine or a man they perceive as being feminine, and so it shall be there. But the F word for gay man does not exist in the text and therefore shall not be added. And the other words that have been used shall not be there because they are not there. And you should definitely ever, never, ever refer to a person as an it, because the writers seem to have had a personal problem with a character being trans, or whatever reason they did it for. Again, probably just the edgy factor. I feel like it may also have been a result of what we do see sometimes when somebody likes something that sometimes gets misunderstood as being for kids. Like liking anime is like, oh, this is cartoons, this is for children. And they kind of get this like complex in which they want to be like, no, I'm a big boy, I watch show for adults, I'm gonna make sure to make this as R-rated as possible to show you how big an adult I am. And it comes off as just juvenile and teenagers trying to look adult, but being adult is not about swearing with your every breath, even though I do it. Does not mean
Me too.
even though like I can be respectful when I'm working on something professional. Casually, that's something else entirely. But when you are working on a project, you don't need to cram in F word or fuck into every sentence you get away with, and that's what we're seeing a lot in the scanlation. We just suddenly somebody just like Wolfwood just suddenly calls Bash a crackhead for no reason. Like it's just like, okay, crackhead, I guess. Suddenly just goes like, oh, we're gonna fuck him up. Things like that. It's like, what? What am I reading? And weird things like that. And it's certainly not because that Trigun Maximum of the manga does not like have its fair share of adult content. Like there's definitely more than a few people being called a bitch or a dickweed or something like that. But the Japanese language is very um it has a limited amount of words used for swearing. So sometimes you see the same swear come up so many times, and you're like, okay, I have a choice here, depending on how angry the character is, to pick him saying shit or crap or fuck or something, because it's the same word for everything. I guess like kzo, something down that line, and it's like it's the same word for everything. I'm like, okay, cool. And that's like where sometimes the creative liberty comes in, where we have to like, okay, this is a fuck moment.
Yeah. Meanwhile, in English, you can make anything to a swear word if you try hard enough. So
I've invented a bunch of them. I
yeah.
have invented a bunch of them, and I have a combination of
They're,
words that are fun.
they're like Legos, you know.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
put them
yeah.
together and make a new
You
swear.
could put ass clown is a good
Yeah.
one. Shit for
Fish
brain is
stick.
another good one.
I once called somebody a fish stick derogatory.
Yeah, Negatively charged fish stick.
I once told
Man,
somebody I
fuck
would
your
curse.
chicken wings.
I once told somebody I would curse them out, but the curse words were too good for them.
Oh no.
That was a great
Wow, that is
response.
a
That's just terrible, though.
burn.
I said,
Wow.
it's terrible. It's like right out of Eminem. It's right out of Eminem, right there.
Oh god. Become the cuss god. Cuss god.
I will say though, in terms of adding things into the text, there's one moment that stands out to me that we debated about and we discussed it and we decided to do it. In There's a chapter. It's called a spin-off chapter. It's called Freed Bird, and it has to do with
It does not
Wolfwood.
have anything to do with Leonard Skinner.
No, nothing to do with Leonard Skinner. It's like a little one-shot Wolfwood story, and the villain of the story is sort of like this rich kid in a small town. Has his goons beat up Wolfwood, and there's a line about, he says like, "Oh, you better mind your own business, else I'll send my goons after you again," something like that. Well, we did allow ourselves to take the creative liberty of having this villain say, um, "Don't stick your big nose." I was
He
like, "Keep
says,
your
"Don't
big
stick your nose
nose."
in my business," and we just like
Yeah,
pop up with a big nose.
yeah. Don't stick your big nose in my business. So we did change it to big nose, because Wolfwood has a very, very distinct nose. We thought it would be funny to have this villain kind of make a dig at his features a little bit more.
The wedge. And so sometimes we do. It's very rare, but occasionally for a character that's already portrayed as like a bit of a joke to begin with, like he's already an absolute fucking Shakespearean level villain, kind of like joke. So if we get a little silly, I mean, they're kind of like big nose. Come on, do it, big nose.
Big nose.
Let's fucking do it. So like that happens sometimes. Oh
So
yeah, that kind of also gone.
please continue.
It is also like where we at one point during translation come to like I translate like a thing and I'm like this is like worded super specifically and I'm like wondering, man, there's something about this that's like worded so insanely specific, but I'm not sure what it is. And then I bring it to the working board when we were like looking through the raw translation, and Wallace like, "That's Shakespeare." What? That
Yeah.
line, that's Shakespeare. And I'm like, oh, and then we realized that it's like what was the line? It was
It was
time to
Knives.
shuffle off this mortal coil.
Yeah, Knives was quoting Hamlet.
And it's like, oh shit. Because there's a lot of this. Like there's a ton of reference towards all kind of Western media. And I had like written this line as time to leave this mortal coil because there was something, the text was so specific about mortal coil and some other funny wording, and I was like, what the hell's going on here? Like you can feel immediately that something is going on, and just this Vol suddenly be like, that's Hamlet. That's Hamlet. A character, Knives is quoting Hamlet. Wow, okay. It just go on.
Oh, I was just gonna say too, like Naito is a huge nerd. So there are these little kind of nods to, like you said, the other Western media. Um, like in the sand steamer heist.
Yeah.
Which appears in the anime. In the manga, there's there's this kind of throwaway line of like, oh, the sand steamer is, barreling out of control and it's heading towards like the canyon drop off and it's picking up speed, it's getting faster. And Naito makes a very clear point of having like one of the pilots yell out, "We've hit 88 miles an hour." And D is like, well, should we translate that into kilometers? Like we're kind of using like metric for a lot of this. And I'm like, no, like that's a Back to the Future reference.
88
Like,
miles per hour.
he wants it to be at DeLorean speed.
It's very like front and center. It's very specific that you must see that they're saying 88 miles per hour. Oh yeah, speaking of like the miles per hour and the metric system, at first I was unsure because everything in the manga was written in metric because Japan uses the metric system. However, that one line they use miles just so you can see 88 miles per hour. But we made the decision that people on the planet itself, again, who speaks American English as their native language, we have decided that they use the imperial system. But there comes later some people from elsewhere that are using the metric system because of their different influences. So we have also made some differences in culturally what systems they use. So if they use dollars or double dollars. They speak American English and they use the imperial system. So they talk in miles and they talk in feet and they talk in all that stuff. That's what we got made a decision to. But the 88 miles per hour was a again one of these like strange references you find all around. There's more. There's a lot of them. They're
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. Something that got lost in the anime, unfortunately.
And obviously, I mean, I could talk about Trigun all day. And what I know of Trigun is I don't know everything, and you guys know way more than I do. We've been speaking for like an hour and almost 40 minutes now. And but I do want to give you guys an opportunity where people can find the manga that you're translating, where people can read it, as well as where can people follow you guys on social media, check out what you're doing, obviously share it out, give any
Mm-hmm.
type of support that you guys need, and anything of that nature.
You can find Overhaul and all the stuff we are posting and other updates on Reddit, on the Trigun subreddit. It's still being posted every week. You can find us on Tumblr as well. Also, Trigun Overhaul posting every week as well. And you can find us on Twitter, where we also post every week. Or you can join the Tricon Discord called Tricord, where we as well are not only possible to, well, you can reach us directly through every one of the platforms, but a lot more directly through Discord, where we also are sharing our work and talking about it and joking about it, occasionally making some memes about it. But that's like where you can find us. And
Um.
go on.
Oh, we also have a Kofi as well.
Yeah.
So we made the decision to open the Kofi as a tip jar. Again, just clearly we are not for profit. This is a fan
Mm-hmm.
project.
Free to everyone.
Yep, unofficial translation. But we are posting the chapters there. And if you're in the mood for buying us a coffee, we won't say no. So.
Yeah, and I'm gonna just keep saying it. You have to support indie content creators. And what that means is obviously money is crucial. No question about it. Anybody who has Buy Me a Coffee, a Patreon, a PayPal donation link, has merchandise, anything of that nature, you need to actually buy that so that it goes directly or indirectly into the project. Obviously, Buy Me a Coffee is a more direct approach. But even going beyond that, support doesn't end with money. Support actually starts and should continue throughout with actually sharing out projects and actually reaching out to people and sharing out the chapters on your Facebook wall, on your Twitter. If you have a Discord group, sharing it there onto Instagram, because that goes a long way. One of the things that bothers me is people say on Kickstarter, I only back projects that I like, and that's fine, but you don't have to back a project to share it out. You could share out a project, and so for whatever reason, whether you're financially strapped or you just don't have the money or you don't love Trigun that much, you can share this out for free. And sharing it out is so crucial at this point. And then if you do read it and you're like, oh man, these people are working their asses off, you could throw them $5, and that helps to keep this project alive and whatnot. So I really recommend that people do that. As far as I'm concerned about me, obviously, I appreciate when people share out my interviews, actually like my Facebook page, like my YouTube. They actually watch it through, they comment, and I appreciate that. Obviously, I have an eBay store. I appreciate that as well. And I got some cool metal cards like this right here that you could buy from my Kickstarter. And I have her as a metal card, as well as I got my T-shirt, which is making fun of Amuro Ray. It's a Gundam thing. I don't always eat tacos, but when I do, it's at Londo Bell. Earth Federation, Amuro Ray, Char's Counterattack. 16 colors, red bubble, and you can get it on a mini skirt. So if you would like to get it on a mini skirt, I'm totally down for that, and I approve. You can get that mini skirt in like 9 colors. So I'm just saying, This is a great logo on a miniskirt. That's all I'm gonna say. But anyhow, this is how you support what I'm doing. But most importantly, sharing it out means a lot to me. It goes a huge way because the more people that see it, it benefits me. It benefits the two people I had on tonight, and it is ultra important. So on that note, I'm gonna give whoever wants it the final word.
Well, I want to thank you very much for having us on again. And everybody, watch this guy's stuff. Buy stuff. Do it. You know you want to. And any kind of sharing and any kind of like ways that you can bring up or share Overhaul with everybody is greatly appreciated. It will always remain free for everyone. You can always get all the content you want, and you're always free to contact us and ask for files or stuff we've been working on. We just want to give the Trigun community all the things they deserve to have, and to kind of just spread the love of the series. But yeah, thank you, man, for having us.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Like you said, D. Yeah, Andrew, you give great interviews. We're so happy to be back. We really appreciate you having us back because it's always such a fun conversation with you.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that word of mouth. If you like something, be excited about it. Share it with your friends. Even if you can't support it financially, spread it around. Hit that retweet. Hit that reblock button. Um,
Encourage people
and
content.
mhm, exactly.
Well, I don't think I could have said it any better myself, everybody. That is a wrap.
Yeah.